The microphone picked it up. 400 people in the main hall of the Nexus Tech Talent Summit did not all hear it. But the 8 rows closest to the panel table did, and what those 8 rows did in the 2 seconds that followed. The quiet laugh, the exchanged glances, the particular social electricity of a room that has just been given permission to dismiss someone, was visible from every seat in the building. Dana Whitfield did not correct it. She let it run. Then, she looked down at her clipboard and called the next candidate's name. And Amara Osei Bonsu walked off the stage in Austin, Texas, on a Thursday afternoon, with the specific composure of a woman who has been preparing for moments like this one her entire professional life, and who has learned that what you carry out of a room matters more than what the room did to you. What Dana Whitfield did not know: the engineering manager in row 11 had already bookmarked Amara's GitHub portfolio on his phone. The conference's live stream had been running to 1,200 additional viewers. And the colleague Dana had whispered to was the conference's diversity coordinator, who had been documenting panel behavior since 9 that morning. By 9:47 that evening, Dana Whitfield was sitting in a hotel room with a piece of stationery and a decision she had not been able to avoid making since she watched herself on a laptop screen at 7:30, 4 years earlier. This is where it started. The first time Amara Osei Bonsu pushed code to a production environment at Meridian FinTech, she was 24 years old, 3 weeks into her first engineering role. And working from a standing desk, she had assembled herself in the corner of a shared apartment in Atlanta because Meridian's office hadn't finished build-out yet, and the whole team was remote. The code was a small fix, a latency issue in the payment processing pipeline that a senior engineer had flagged and expected to spend the following week on, and that Amara had found, diagnosed, and patched in 11 hours across her second and third days of employment, because she had read the code-based documentation the way she read everything, completely in order, with notes. The senior engineer had reviewed the pull request and approved it without comment, which was the highest form of praise in the culture of that particular codebase, and had sent her a message afterward that said simply "nice catch." She had saved it. She saved things that confirmed she was doing the work correctly, because she had learned early that confirmation was not always going to come from outside, and that building an internal record of her own competence was a form of professional self-preservation. She had grown up in Silver Spring, Maryland, the daughter of Ghanaian immigrants who had built their life in America around the specific conviction that education was the infrastructure on which everything else was built. Her father was a civil engineer. Her mother taught middle school mathematics for 22 years. They had been matter-of-fact about expectation in the way of people who have structured their entire immigration around a belief and do not need to perform it. The expectation was in the household's daily rhythm, in the library books and the science museum memberships, and the Saturday tutoring her mother ran for neighborhood children who needed it, in the way her parents spoke about their own work as though it were the most natural thing in the world to spend a life doing something that was genuinely useful. Amara had absorbed this as instinct rather than instruction. She had been building things since she was 9, websites at first, crude ones, then progressively less crude ones as she iterated, then actual applications that solved problems she had identified in her own daily life. Then the capstone project at her state school in Maryland that her professor had asked to show at a departmental showcase and that had been seen by a recruiter from a mid-sized company who had offered her a summer internship that had led to her first job. She had gone to Georgia Tech for her master's because the distributed systems program was the best available to her within the cost constraints she was working inside, and she had completed it in 2 years while working full-time at Meridian because she could not afford to take 2 years off, and because she had found, somewhat to her own surprise, that the combination of graduate coursework and professional engineering produced a kind of cross-pollination that made her better at both. She wrote a technical blog post in her second year of the master's program about a distributed systems pattern she had developed for handling high-volume transaction processing under network partition conditions. The post was read 11,000 times in the first month and cited in 4 subsequent posts by engineers at companies she had read about since she was an undergraduate. She did not mention this to anyone at Meridian. It was her work. It existed regardless of whether anyone at Meridian knew about it. By the time she applied to the Nexus Tech Talent Summit's pitch competition, Amara had 4 years at Meridian, a master's degree, 3 internal promotions, the distributed systems optimization that had reduced infrastructure costs by $340,000 annually, and a GitHub portfolio that any engineering manager worth their role would have recognized within 4 minutes of opening it. She applied because a colleague forwarded the application and said it seemed like something she'd be good at, and because she had been thinking about her next move and the conference would accelerate certain conversations, and because she had prepared for professional presentations her entire life in the specific way of someone who knows that preparation is the variable within her control. She was not nervous. She was ready. Dana Whitfield had been head of technical recruiting at Crestline Technologies for 3 years and in technical recruiting for 18. She was good at her job in the ways that 18 years of practice makes a person good at a job. She understood the market. She moved quickly. She had built a sourcing methodology that her team had adopted and that the company's growth over the past 3 years had validated. She hired hundreds of engineers a year. She had been invited to sit on the Nexus Summit's recruiting panel because she was a known name in the industry, had spoken at the conference twice before, and represented the kind of company, publicly traded, well-resourced, with a day initiative that had its own landing page, that the conference wanted visible in its talent programming. She was also, beneath all of this, a person whose intuitions had been shaped by 18 years of operating inside an industry that had specific ideas about what talent looked like. And those ideas were not neutral. And Dana had not examined them with the rigor she applied to everything else in her work, because they had never produced outcomes she had been required to question. She hired well by the metrics she used. The metrics she used did not include a category for the candidates who had never made it past her clipboard. Without fail, every time Dana evaluated a candidate in a live setting, she made 3 rapid assessments before the presentation began. Presentation, presence, and what she called fit signal, an intuitive read on whether the candidate would slot naturally into the environments she was recruiting for. She had developed this framework over years of watching successful placements and reverse engineering what had made them successful. It was, in the way of most intuitive frameworks developed over years of practice, partially accurate and partially a codification of patterns that had nothing to do with engineering ability and everything to do with which candidates reminded Dana's pattern recognition system of the engineers she had already successfully placed. Engineers who were, when you ran the demographics, 73% white and male. Dana was aware of this number in the abstract sense that people are aware of numbers in their industry. She had not connected it to her fit signal framework. The 2 facts lived in different rooms in her professional self-understanding, and the door between those rooms had never been opened. The Nexus Summit's main hall was 3 days of panels, workshops, and networking sessions culminating in the Thursday afternoon pitch competition, which ran from 1 to 5 p.m. and featured 30 candidates competing in 4-minute slots, 3 minutes of presentation, 60 seconds of panel questions. The panel of 5 included Dana at center left, a venture partner from a prominent Austin VC firm, a CTO from a healthcare technology startup, the diversity coordinator named Priya Mehta, who sat at the far right end and who had a clipboard that looked identical to Dana's but contained a different set of questions, and a senior director of engineering from a cloud infrastructure company who had specifically requested the panel seat because he had been following technical blog posts from several of this year's applicants and wanted to see them in person. Amara was candidate 19. She took the stage at 3:42 p.m. Her presentation was 3 minutes and 12 seconds, which was 12 seconds over, a fact that would have mattered to some panels, and that this panel noted and then did not act on because the 12 seconds had been the most technically substantive 12 seconds of the afternoon. She had built her slides herself, which was obvious in the way that built by an engineer slides are always obvious. Clean, specific, no stock imagery. The distributed systems architecture diagram in slide 3 rendered with the precision of someone who had drawn it from memory because she had built the thing it depicted. She moved through the 4 years quickly and without unnecessary summary, the way engineers present to engineers. Here is what the problem was. Here is what I built. Here is what it did to the numbers. The infrastructure cost reduction was on slide 5 with a specific dollar figure and a percentage and a footnote that cited the engineering review she had written documenting the methodology, which was a hyperlink in the presentation, but which she did not direct the audience to because she was not there to prove she had written it. She was there to explain what she had built. The senior director from the cloud infrastructure company, a man named Kevin Park, who had read Amara's blog post 18 months ago and recognized the methodology in slide 3 immediately, leaned forward at his seat on the panel. He wrote something on his notepad. He did not stop writing for the duration of her presentation. At 3:46, the 60-second question period began. Dana Whitfield's question was the second one asked. She had been making notes on her clipboard during the presentation, check marks for some things, a small notation on the slide 3 diagram that she had not recognized and had not asked about because asking would have required knowing what she was looking at. Her question, when she asked it, was about culture fit. Whether Amara would describe herself as a natural fit for a fast-moving startup environment. It was a question Donna had asked 14 other candidates that afternoon. It was a question that had a right answer and a wrong answer, and the right answer was enthusiastic and demonstrated comfort with ambiguity and used the word collaborative. And candidates who gave the right answer moved forward in Dana's mental sorting process, and candidates who did not gave her data she needed. Amara gave an answer that was neither the right answer nor the wrong answer, as Dana had framed them. She said she would let the work speak to that. She had led 3 cross-functional projects under deadline conditions at Meridian, 2 of them in environments where the engineering requirements shifted significantly mid-cycle, and she described specifically how she had managed those shifts. She said she believed the most important factor in startup performance was not comfort with ambiguity, but the ability to make good technical decisions quickly under incomplete information, and that her record on that specific dimension was documented in the projects she had described. She said it with the level confidence of someone who has been precise her whole life and does not apologize for precision. It was a better answer than the question deserved. Donna wrote something on her clipboard and turned to the colleague at her left, Priya Mehta, who had been watching Dana's clipboard all day, and said, at the volume she used for asides, that she was not sure the energy was quite right. She said it looking at Amara, who was still at the podium. The panel table's ambient microphone was live. The front 8 rows heard it. The laugh started in row 3 and ran through row 6 before it dissipated, and in the 2 seconds it ran, Amara Ose Bonsu stood at the podium of the Nexus Tech Talent Summit, with her hands at her sides and her face composed in the way she had composed it for moments like this one since she was 24 years old. And she did not give the room the reaction it was producing itself to see. Donna called the next candidate. Kevin Park did not laugh. He was still writing. Priya Mehta made a note on her own clipboard with a timestamp. It read 15:47. She underlined it. The networking reception began at 5:30 in the hotel's atrium. Marble floors, sponsored bars at both ends, the specific ambient noise of 300 people performing connection. Donna moved through it with the efficiency of someone who had worked rooms like this one for 18 years, exchanging cards, identifying candidates worth following up with, running the mental file she maintained on every interaction. 3 conversations went slightly wrong in ways she attributed to the day's fatigue and the inevitable friction of a packed conference schedule. The 4th conversation was with a senior engineering manager named David Okonkwo, who ran infrastructure for a Series C company in San Francisco and who had watched the afternoon session on the conference livestream from his hotel room because he had a late flight and had been following the pitch competition's listed candidates. He found Donna at the bar near the east wall. He said he had watched the session that afternoon. He said the moment with the microphone had been seen by a significant number of people. He said he was surprised it had happened, given her experience. He said it without heat. He said it the way someone says something they have decided needs to be said and has chosen to say cleanly. Dana said she appreciated the feedback. She did not appreciate it in the moment. She processed it in the elevator, in the corridor, at her hotel room door. And when she opened the laptop on the desk and found the conference's live stream archive and scrolled to 3:47 p.m., she watched herself. She watched the clipboard notation. She watched the aside to Priya. She watched her own mouth form the words, and then she watched the 2 seconds. 2 seconds was how long it ran. She had not registered it as 2 seconds in the room. It had felt like the natural exhale of a comet landing. And she watched Amara's face at the podium in those 2 seconds, which was the face of a person absorbing something without giving it anything to use. She watched Amara's presentation from the beginning. She watched the architecture diagram in slide 3 that she had not recognized and had made a note about instead of asking. She pulled up the blog post on her phone. She found it in 3 searches, because it was not difficult to find for anyone who knew what they were looking for. And Dana had spent 18 years learning what to look for. And she read the methodology section and understood, with the flat finality of professional recognition, that what she had not known she was looking at was the kind of technical work that her sourcing methodology was supposed to surface, and that she had been sitting 5 feet away from for 3 minutes and 12 seconds and had assessed as wrong energy. She sat with that for a long time. Then she found the hotel stationery in the desk drawer. The letter was 2 paragraphs. She wrote the first one and crossed it out. She wrote it again. The second paragraph she wrote once. She did not read it back. She folded it and wrote the conference director's name on the outside and walked down the hall in her socks and slid it under the door. She booked the 6:15 a.m. flight back to Dallas on her phone before she went to sleep. The conference director found the letter at 7 a.m. He read it twice. He called Dana's cell phone and reached voicemail and left a message asking her to call back. That he was sure whatever the situation was could be discussed. That resignations submitted in the middle of a conference were unusual, and he wanted to make sure she was all right. Dana did not call back. She was already through security. The letter did not describe the incident. It said that she had reached a conclusion about her fitness for her current professional role that she believed she should have reached earlier, and that she was submitting her resignation effective immediately from both the conference panel and her position at Crestline Technologies. It said she was grateful for the opportunities she had been given and regretted the timing. It said nothing else. Her LinkedIn went quiet that morning in the way that professional LinkedIn pages go quiet when someone has stepped back from something and is not yet ready to explain why. Her colleagues at Crestline received a brief email from HR that afternoon announcing her departure and wishing her well. The announcement was met with the specific surprise of an office where someone who was good at their job and showed no signs of leaving has suddenly left, and the specific silence of people who had seen or heard about the conference live stream and who were doing the math and who, one by one, arrived at the answer and did not say it aloud. Kevin Park sent Amara an email at 9 a.m. on Friday. He said he had attended the Thursday session and had been following her technical work since reading her blog post 18 months ago. He said he would like to schedule a conversation if she was open to it. He said his company was building infrastructure for financial services at a scale that had some interesting engineering problems she might find worth thinking about. He said he thought her distributed systems work was the kind of thing his team needed and was not finding. Amara read the email at her kitchen table in Atlanta on Friday morning, coffee in hand, still in the clothes she had flown home in the previous night. She read it twice. She wrote back. She said she was open to a conversation and asked when he was available. They spoke on Monday. The conversation ran 90 minutes, which was 60 minutes longer than Kevin had scheduled, and which neither of them moved to end. By the end of it, he had described 3 engineering challenges his team had been working around for a year that Amara recognized from her own infrastructure work and had specific ideas about. She did not perform ideas. She described approaches, trade-offs, implementation considerations. Kevin listened the way engineers listen when they are hearing something that is actually going to be useful. He made an offer 8 days later. She accepted it 2 days after that. She gave her notice at Meridian on a Thursday, the same day of the week as the conference, which she noted, and which meant nothing, except that Thursdays were apparently when her professional life moved. Her manager, who had watched her grow from a junior engineer who patched a latency issue in 11 hours to the person who had restructured the company's infrastructure and saved it $340,000 annually, said he had known this was coming, and that he was happy for her, and that she was going to be exceptional wherever she landed. She thanked him. She meant it. On her last day at Meridian, she cleared her desk, returned her badge, and took the elevator down to the lobby with a box of her things and the standing desk she had assembled herself 4 years ago, which the company had formally given her at some point, and which she was taking with her because it was good, and because she had built her first 4 years of her career on it, and because some things you carry forward. She drove home in Atlanta traffic on a Thursday evening, the standing desk folded in her back seat, the job offer letter on her phone, 4 years of work in a box, and the next 4 years beginning on Monday. The conference had been 8 days ago. The 2 seconds had been 8 days ago. The laughter had been 8 days ago, and the stationery at the hotel desk, and the letter, and the 6:15 am flight. 8 days. In 8 days, a recruiter who had spent 18 years certain she could identify talent had discovered one specific category of candidate she had been filtering out, and a software engineer who had spent 4 years building something exceptional in a company that was lucky to have her had been seen by the person whose job it was to look. The standing desk fit through her apartment door on the second try. She set it up in the corner. She opened her laptop. Monday was 4 days away. She had work to do.